Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 14 of our new survey of Christianity, Christian history. This is a overview of Christian history, which serves as our introductory core required course for a certificate in Christian studies at Florida International University. We are in the fall of 2022. This is offered by the Religious Studies Department. If you're interested in signing up for the certificate, please contact me and I will take care of you. I'll help you through the process. It is available to people in the community outside the university as well as to university students. You can sign up as a non-degree seeking student if you just want to take 5 courses, including this core required course, and get your certificate in Christian studies. So today we're talking about Christianity since the Second World War, and some of the key developments that arose after the Second World War, which brought a lot of changes, as you might guess. So we're taking our information from chapter 5 of Alistair McGrath's excellent book, Christian History and Introduction. And today we're going to begin going through Western Christianity since the Second World War, pages 303 through 315. I doubt that we'll get all the way through it today. We'll probably have to continue on Wednesday and Friday to go through the whole section. So the outline for this week is Christianity in the Cold War. Now this is going to focus primarily on Europe, but I could teach a whole course on Christianity in the Cold War in Latin America. The World Council of Churches, the New Ecumenism, Billy Graham and the neo-evangelicalism, and post-Christian Europe, Second Vatican Council, and the rise of apologetics. So let's jump right into it. After the Second World War, there was a great impact on Christianity, not only in Europe and the United States, but also beyond the West, in Asia and South America. One of the things that we have to understand about the Second World War is the atrocities committed by against the Jews by the German Reich and others, as well as gypsies and other ethnic groups that were persecuted and killed during the Nazi Holocaust. When this became public knowledge, Jewish-Christian relationships greatly deteriorated. The obvious and reasonable question that Jews had was, why did German Christians not step up and do anything to stop this? And so that was actually a valid question. Also during that time period, Pope Pius XII, who was Pope during the war, was aware of the extermination camps, but said nothing. It later was said in his defense that he was trying to use diplomatic means to save as many Jews as possible, and if he had said anything publicly, it would have hindered his diplomacy, but some people don't buy that as an excuse. Nazi Germany had entered into an agreement in 1939 with the Soviet Union, and they signed a non-aggression pact, which allowed the Soviet Union to divide Romania, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland between German and Soviet spheres of influence. That allowed Germany then to invade Poland without fear of Soviet intervention, but in 1941, Hitler double-crossed Stalin and invaded Russia under the code name Operation Barbarossa. And the Soviet Union now joined the Allies in a war against the German Nazis. The immediate impact on Christianity was negative. The state ideologies of the Eastern Bloc, Soviet bloc, were atheistic and materialist. In 1947, the anti-religious measures were enforced in the Soviet bloc. The hostility of the Soviet Union to religion was evident in the decades immediately following the Second World War. Soviet school textbooks used slogans such as "religion is a fanatic and perverse reflection of the world," or "religion has become the medium for the spiritual enslavement of the masses." Soviet geopolitical influence spread even further into Asia. In the 1940s, the Soviet Union backed Mao Zedong and used Chinese military power as the basis for further expansion into Southeastern Asia, in Korea, also in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The Chinese repression of Tibetan Buddhism was a natural extension of the anti-religious views of the Chinese Communist Party. And that brings us to a nice little picture. There we go. You see the areas in red are under communist rule. There are Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, China and Mongolia, Southeast Asia, also a number of countries in Africa, and then there's little Cuba over there under Florida. And so this was the Soviet Eastern Bloc world, which was inalterably opposed to any kind of religious views. So this brings us to the Cultural Revolution in China, which was the most important development under Mao Zedong. It began in 1966. There's a lot of different reasons why Mao may have catalyzed this cultural movement. It ended with the arrest of the Gang of Four after Mao Zedong's death in 1976. This is basically, interestingly, this is the same period that there were uprisings of students in Japan and France, in the United States, protesting the Vietnam War. There was a massacre of students in Mexico at Tlatelolco Plaza. So there was almost a worldwide generational uprising during this time. And in China, this manifested as a cultural revolution in which young members of the Young Communist Party would accuse people such as university professors, teachers, shop owners, middle-class people, taxi drivers of having Western influence, and cause them to do confession of their crimes and rehabilitation. A number of people died, and of course, religion was intensely persecuted during the Cultural Revolution. It was an intent to eliminate all Western influences, which, in the case of Christianity, it was under a double burden because it was a religion, and it was also considered to be Western in origin. So that left a very uncertain future for faith in China. And there's a picture of Mao Zedong, and the masses holding up pictures of him. This takes us to Protestantism and the fragmentation tendency among Protestants. The 16th century Reformation led to the establishment of a group of Protestant churches, Anabaptists. They were those who did not believe in the infant baptism, but only adult baptism. Anglicans, that's the Church of England. Lutherans, which took their cues from Martin Luther. And the Reformed, who tend to trace themselves back to John Calvin in Switzerland. They often disagreed with Rome, but more importantly, they disagreed with each other. So there was an inherent tendency within Protestantism to fragment into ever smaller pieces of the pie. Protestant turned out to be a movement, a fragmentary movement. Today it is estimated, are you ready for this? It is estimated today that there are at least 20,000 Protestant denominations in the world. 20,000. That's a lot of denominations. So could these differences be set aside, allowing the churches to reunite, or at least achieve better working relationships? Remember Jesus' famous prayer in John chapter 17, "Oh, Father, I pray that they may be one, even as we are one." Based on that prayer, there's been many efforts to try to reunite the Christian world into one body or one movement, and most of them up to this point have been unsuccessful. This is the beginnings of the new ecumenicism. Ecumenical comes from the Greek word oikumene, which means the known inhabited world. After the Armenian genocide, Orthodox churches issued a call for a fellowship of churches, similar to the League of Nations. Oikumene is the Greek word for ecumenism, and it literally means the known world. So this leads us to the World Council of Churches. After the Second War, there was an attempt to reconcile the warring parties of the war, that is, United States, Russia, France, Great Britain, with Germany, Italy, and Japan, in order to try to ensure that there would not be a World War III. And so the Marshall Plan was initiated. The United States offered a good deal of financial assistance to Germany and Japan, and there was an attempt to reunify the global order. And so some people asked, why not within the church? A parallel movement developed within churches. They asked themselves, was this not a God-given moment in which Christian unity might be pursued and achieved? It was against the background of this background that the World Council of Churches was created in the aftermath of the Second World War and located in Geneva, Switzerland, which was the location of the League of Nations prior to the Second World War. So the World Council of Churches, to some degree, was imitating the League of Nations. They met for the first assembly in Amsterdam in 1948. And then they met again in Toronto in 1950, and they issued a Toronto Declaration that their purpose was not to exercise ecclesiastical authority over churches, because many churches were afraid that the World Council of Churches would overshadow or overwhelm their specific denominations. So they reassured their members, and they said their purpose was to bring churches into contact with one another and to promote discussion of questions of Christian unity or church unity. Let me go ahead and play that. There it is, the Toronto Declaration. The purpose is to bring churches together into contact with one another and promote discussion of questions of church unity. Catholic and Orthodox churches might send observers, but initially, at least, how full membership was limited to Protestants only. Oh, I should have stayed there. One more picture. So here's a picture of one of the meetings of some of the leaders of the World Council of Churches. And this is a more recent meeting, since it's in color, and you see there are several Eastern Orthodox prelates available, as well as Lutheran and Anglican. You can tell that by their dress. Also from Africa and from other continents. So Western cultural hostility. The WCC has always made it clear that it is not some type of megachurch which exists over and above its constituent churches as an ecclesiastical authority. It's only a coordinating entity. There was no doubt that this was seen as necessary as the situation of the churches began to change in the West. In the 1970s and 80s, there was a sense that the Western culture was becoming increasingly secular and hostile to the Christian faith, which led to many Christians wondering if they ought to stop fighting one another and concentrate on survival. Good idea. Nevertheless, this led to a gradual decline in influence of the World Council of Churches, as it failed to live up to high expectations in the post-war period. The council found itself experiencing difficulty in holding its members together. The organization drifted towards a more liberal theological stance during the 1960s and 70s and lost many conservatives who left the organization. It became increasingly clear that the vision was somewhat unrealistic, and it failed to take into consideration the realities of church life. So that is our discussion of the first part of this week 14. We are discussing Christianity, global Christianity after the Second World War. And I will continue on Wednesday with the new evangelicalism and Billy Graham, and we'll see where we go from there. Again, thank you for your kind attention. Feel free to reach out to me by email, WhatsApp, Facebook. I'm on all of them, or to leave a comment in the this YouTube video below. Let me know if you're interested in our certificate, and I will continue with you on Wednesday in our survey of Christianity, 2,000 years of history. Thank you. Take care. Talk to you soon.